Alrighty, welcome back, boys and girls. It's your main math man, Mr. Shank, coming to you live from Summit Academy. In this video, we're working on that lesson number 9. So we've been working with our slopes and talking about comparing graphs. And what I want you to do is look at this first warm-up. It says, which line doesn't belong? Discuss with your neighbor and explain why. So I have a sentence starter on here. Again, just pause the video, work with your partner. Again, real simple. It just says, I think that line blank does not belong because blank. So feel free to pause, think about it, discuss, and write a sentence on why you think that. All right, so now it says, different situation. It says Noah put $40 on his fare card. Every time he rides public transportation, $2.50 is subtracted from the amount available on his card. And so probably something to keep in mind is that it says that phrase subtracted. And so it says how much money in dollars is available on his card after he takes, and then it has different situations. So how much does he start with? Well, I would say he starts with $40. So after one ride, he has $40. After 0 rides, he has $40 because that's what he starts with. And it says after one ride, well, I take 40 minus $2.50. And so I'm going to say that's going to be $37.50. And then after that, after 2 rides, I can say as $35. Now, how can we write that for that part D? So X rides, well, it's saying to write an equation. So that's what we're trying to do. So if we say, if we're trying to figure out what our equation would be, well, I'd say that I could write it like this. I could say Y is going to be the dollars on the card. And so the way to get that is by taking, and we say 40, and since we're saying subtracting, we'd say 40 minus, and then $2.50. And we're saying for each X, where X is the number of rides. So as long as you have minus 2.5X, that way you know what you should have. And then for the next one, it says to graph this relationship. And so again, we're graphing the function. We're graphing the function y equals 40 minus, or let's say 40 minus 2.5x. And what we can do is we can use this graph. If you want to try using Desmos to graph it out, or a graphic calculator, feel free. But some important parts that I know is this. It's saying, well, I had the point 0, 40, because that's what we started with. So I'm going to say plot the point 0, 40. And then I can say, well, after 2 rides, he was at $35. So I can also plot that point. And as soon as I have 2 points, I can graph my line. So make sure that you're taking, draw your straight edge, or use your straight edge to draw your function, I should say. And we want to go the whole way through. And so what that means is we should have a line something like this, because it has to pass through those points. So let me fix that one end real quick. So as long as you're saying, okay, it goes through those points, and then let me fix that. Something like this maybe. And let me move. That way it's on the point. Okay, so once we have our 2 points graphed, we can draw the line through those points. And then notice the pattern that's going with it. Again, since our slope is negative, again, it's going down and to the right. And then it says for number 3, how many rides can Noah take before he runs out of money? Where do you see this number of rides on the graph? Well, I could say this. I could say, do in green. Sure. I'll say this. I can say Noah can take 16 rides. You take 16 rides before he runs out of money. And where did I get that from? Well, if I look at my graph, I notice that, hey, I'm going for every 2 steps or 2 blocks down I go 2 steps to the right. And if I follow that pattern, I build that staircase, I follow that ramp the whole way down, and I can say, hey, it's on this point down here. I can say that's going to be the point 16, 0. And that makes sense because we said our y value is the amount of money remaining, and our x value was the number of rides that he took. So now on the next one, just as a reminder, take a look at that picture. Notice how we can say the slopes are similar. So this is just an example because I could say, hey, my change in x is plus 3 for that line v, and my change in y is minus 1. I can have a similar triangle, however, since my slope is positive, I'm going up and to the right. So instead of going down and to the right, I'm going up and to the right. So it doesn't always have to be positive, doesn't always have to be negative. Again, notice how the ratios are similar because they're both 1/3. So let me write that. Slope for t is 1/3. However, the slope for line v is going to be negative 1/3. So even though they have similar values, the slopes are different. All right. So for that 9.3 towards the bottom of the page, it says here's a graph that shows the amount of Hans Fare card for every day of last July. And it says for the first part, describe what happened with the amount of Hans Fare card in July. So I can say this. Let me write it. I can say, let's put it in here again. I can say the amount. Let me actually write it on the side. The amount on the card was how much? Was $20 every day. And that makes sense because as the days passed our x-axis, what happened to the graph? Well, it seems that it stayed the same. So I would say the amount on the card did not change. So what does that mean for our slope? Which we'll talk about here in a second. So the amount on the card did not change. So still using that same picture, for step 2, what it says to do is to plot and label 3 different points on the line. So I want you to do this. I want you to pause and plot. And what I want you to do is I want you to plot and label. And what it means by label, so let me do an example. So again, it has to be on the line. It has to be on the line. So I'd say like at this point right here, if I pick any point on the line, it does not matter what's the x value, what's the y value. So I'd say, okay, this would be the point 16 and 20. So what I want you to do, pause and plot 3 points. So let me write that, pause and plot. Pause and plot 3 points and label. So pause the video, find that x and y value of 3 points on this line. All right, now that you plotted 3 points, we can say, moving to the last part, it says write an equation that represents the amount on the card in July, which is y, and after x days. Well, what's happening? Well, it's saying that our graph, regardless of the days, is going to be 20. And so a way I can write this is going to be y equals just 20. And if you want to, you can check using that graphic calculator. You can say, hey, what does this look like? Well, it should be a horizontal line because we're saying there's no change regardless of, what we have on our x-axis. Regardless of that, our y value is not changing. So since there's no change in the y, even though our x is changing, we can say on the next part, we can say what's happening or what makes sense for the slope of the line that represents the amount of Hans' fare in the of his fare card in July. Well, I could say this. I would say the slope is how much? I'd say the slope of the graph is 0. And that makes sense because if we're looking at our equation, y equals 20, it's like we're having a plus 0x next to it because, again, our slope is 0. That's why this term goes away. So when we look at our function, this term isn't there. So that's just another way that you can remember it. Again, feel free to pause, rewind, replay, ask questions. Excuse me. Moving to the back, it says Elena borrowed some money from her brother. She pays him back by giving him the same amount every week. The graph shows how much she owes after each week, and it says to answer and explain your reasoning for each question. So a couple different things here. For the first part, it says what is the slope of the line? So what I have to do is find my change in x. So let me make sure I have my definition down. I'd say slope, as always, still have the same definition. I'd say is my change in y divided by my change in x. And so what I can do is I can find that. So let's kind of find some points. And I always like to start on that y-intercept because that one's a little bit easier to say. So what's this point right here? So this point is at y equals 18. And what I can do, I can write two ordered pairs that I have. So I'd say this is the point, this is when x equals 1, y equals 15. So two ordered pairs I have. Let's find what we have. I could say, let's have ordered pair, I have 0, 18, and I have the ordered pair 1, 15. So find your change in y. So I'm going to say my change in y, well, I'm subtracting 3. And if I look at my change in x, I am adding 1. And so I can write that ratio. I'm going to say this is going to be negative 3 over positive 1, which is the same as, I can say slope is going to be equal to negative 3. That makes sense because if I look at my picture, my graph is going down and to the right. So I'm going to say this. So let me write that response in there. I can say the slope is negative 3 since the change in y is down 3 and change in x is right 1. Okay. So make sure you can always write your slope as a ratio, meaning a fraction. Find the change in your y divided by your change in your x, get your slope. So with the number 2, it's explained how you know whether slope is positive or negative. Well, we said our slope is negative, so let me write that. So I said the slope is negative since the graph goes down and right. So if it went up and to the right, you know, it'll look kind of like this. However, since our graph is going down and to the right, we know it's going to be a negative slope. Then it says, for number 3, it says, what does the slope represent in this situation? So we can say this, we can say the slope represents, again, we're going from the situation using our idea that we have, and we're going to a full complete sentence. So the slope represents the amount that Elena pays back each week. And I know that from having my graph, I'm saying, okay, still amount owed. How much is being paid back? Well, it's saying that I'm paying back $3 each week, and so that's why I can be subtracting that from the total amount owed. Then number 4, this is how much did Elena borrow? We could say Elena borrowed how much? Well, what's the starting amount? It would be $18. We know that from, we could say, which is on the graph. We could say the point 0, 18. So make sure you can find, and that's always going to be wherever x equals 0 is our y-intercept. Then for number 5, it says it will take, or sorry, it says how much time will it take for Elena to pay back all the money she borrowed? Well, as we kind of follow the graph, it's similar to that problem with Noah where he's seeing how much money's left in his fare card. We would say this, we would say it will take Elena a total of 6 weeks to pay the borrowed money back. And we can say that point again, this point right here, that 6, 0, we could say the point that goes with this is that point 6, 0. Again, we're saying how many weeks have passed. It's 6. How much money is owed? $0. So that's why it goes with that point. So make sure, again, you take your time, ask questions as they come up. That way you know what you're doing. Make sure this gets in your binder. And then lastly, for that X ticket. So I'll read it to you, and then I want you guys to try it out on your own. So try out on your own. So it says each square on a grid represents 1 unit on each side. Calculate the slope of graph D and then explain or show your reasoning so you can do it numerically, or if you want to write a sentence like my change in y is this, my change in x is this, and my slope is this. That's also okay. For number 2, calculate the slope of E. What situation could be graph? So you have to come up with a sentence for that one as well. And then for number 3, it says on the blank grid, draw a line that passes through the point. So it has to pass through the point, and it has a slope of -2. So you should know what that looks like, and make sure that you're asking questions if they come up. And as always, super slam that subscribe button.